This thing's always everywhere. Ah! Damn it! Waste fucking shot. Damn it. Fuck! This fucking place. Gotta find a way out of here. I'm gonna fucking die in there. Okay.
Hello. Hopefully, you've been practicing on your gardening skills, because today we are entering the Darkwood. A terrifying and horrible landscape that it is. So, Darkwood is a top-down survival horror title, and besides its top-down aspect, it shares a lot of interesting aspects with more traditional survival horror. Finding ammo, weaponry, hints, clues, story, puzzles. It has a lot of similarity in those aspects. Because this definitely ain't fucking Resident Evil 4, Resident Evil 5, or Resident Evil 6, where you're running down and mowing down shit. Fighting multiple enemies can be massively dangerous, and will depend on your survival skills and your capabilities. So let's first get into the setup for this. You play as a unknown person that you, the player, are at least not aware of who or what they are, but throughout the game, through exploring and finding things, you can get a better idea who you're playing as. But you'll start the game as the Doctor and transition to the main protagonist for the rest of the story in what is essentially the tutorial of the game, finding yourself locked in the Darkwood, slowly trying to figure your way out of a hellscape nightmare. Darkwood is, well, a lot to do with the forest. It has a lot to do with really weird creatures that are clearly deformed over with funguses, tree roots, and wood. It's very, very unsettling shit. It's truly some terrifying looking shit. And the graphical art style is fantastic for this game. Now, before I go really further in this game, I want to emphasize that this was a really good game, and it's available through multiple systems, including DRM free on PC, so it is a very recommended game, but I do feel like this is the type of game, like how I am with like Souls-style games, that is best suited to enter not really understanding all the mechanics properly, but learning them through your own experience. But that is my own preference, and not necessarily everyone's, but I just want to throw it out there in case you happen to share a similar preference like that. Otherwise, let us continue dwelling into the game. So, you do make use of melee and guns in your adventure. Now, for the most part, you're likely to progress through the different weapons in an orderly fashion, but depending on your luck, how you go about exploring in that, you could run into different, more powerful weapons earlier, or things needed to make them, as there is a crafting system, and you will make many of the things that you will use through your journey, but you can find some of the things already pre-made if you're clever enough, search hard enough, or you're lucky enough. Now, one of the interesting aspects of this game is the fact that the world isn't 100% same every time you play the game. The locations all exist, but what's different is how they're laid about. The map area is not 100% the same every time, so there is a bit of a random reshuffling of the environment. So that helps with some replay value in making it a little bit unknown. I like the idea, essentially, because one of the problems with replaying survival horror games a lot of times is you played it once, you know everything, you know. It kind of feels like a way to shuffle monsters around, so you're not always aware what might be there around the corner. And on top of that, there are interesting night events, as part of the game mechanic is you search and survive by daylight, and you hide at your hideout by moonlight. I was trying to make a terrible Sailor Moon joke, though. Or reference, I should say. You survive by daylight, and you hide by moonlight, as you have to go to one of the few hideouts you can find in each location, and you have to survive there at night, because joining out in the darkness at night is just a one-way trip to hell, as you cannot survive outside the hideouts that have the strange, mysterious fog during night. So during the nighttime sections, you have to hide and stay there until daylight comes back. Now, the interesting thing is, many different things can happen at nighttime. There are many different events. Some are useful, some are unique, and some are fucking terrifying because they're there to fucking murder you. But for the most time, you're going to fight for survival or try to delay things from trying to kill you until the sun comes back. Because once the sunlight comes back, regardless of how many monsters and shit are running around or in the hideout, they're all gone. They just vanish. And so does the loot, so make sure you loot anything you kill. So, essentially, whether you fight, delay, or just run away until daylight, there's a few different ways you can go about it. Now, the game has interactable characters you'll meet through your journey, and similar to like a, how should I say, like Elden Ring, Dark Souls, Elder Scrolls, and that, these characters you can interact in different ways. You can help them, you can trade with them, you can do their requests, or you can just brutally murder them and not give a fuck. So the way you interact with characters can greatly vary, but some are obviously more helpful than others, and while others may seek more to harm you in the future, it's really a game of who to trust and who to not trust in some cases, because you never know who might be out to get you. As there is a Pacific character, depending on your actions, that may very well take action upon you. So, do diligence to consider your options of what's worth doing and what's not worth doing, because they're all rewards and lives at the stakes of those, but they all come down to your moral opinions on that. The forest area is broken up into a few little sub areas, each having their own hideout, but going forward from there, you're into a big open area that only has one hideout. So essentially the game is broken into 4 different areas, the forest area being 3 sub areas. It's not a super long game. Again, depending on your skill, it could be a pretty short title for you, or it could be a very, very long title. It took me over 100 in-game days to find my way out of Darkwood. But initially, that's also to do with my skill being a little lesser than what others probably will be in this journey of this game. So, one of the things I would like to criticize with this game, and just to make sure it's clear, we're playing the PS4 version of this title. This is a limited 1 version in case any future versions of it come to existence. But to make one thing simply clear, the game really likes to boast on the loading screens that this is an unforgiving game. I have to disagree with this statement. I think this is a very fair game once you realize all the mechanics that you, as a player, can take advantage of. While the game claims to be unfair, the game literally makes it where it's not really possible to fail as far as I'm aware of. Let me give an example. There is a merchant, after you survive a hideout, a night at a hideout, there's a merchant that will show up at the hideout. This merchant will trade for a currency that you earn by surviving. If you die, you don't get a currency, but if you live, you do. You can do this, as far as I know, indefinitely. Like I said, I survived over 100 days in Darkwood before I escaped. As far as I know, you can keep going. You can keep going and earning currency, meaning anything that the traders trade to you, you can always farm currency to buy medical supplies, guns, well, gun parts. The merchant does not sell you any direct weapons, only parts. So you'd have to buy the parts and have the capability of making one. But you can get the parts, you can buy ammo, food, resources to make lockpicks and things, gasoline, which you need to keep the lights on for your hideout. They sell pretty much everything you need for success. So if you're having trouble, go to a hideout you're capable of surviving at, farm some money, and buy what you need to continue onward. This is something I realized and actually took advantage of to have some ammo available, because some of the later monsters were just too hard for me to melee. They were just too hard for me to melee, honestly. Especially when it came to groups. So one-on-one was one thing, but when it came to groups, oh no, it's pull the shotgun out time and go downtown on some shit. Like, seriously. This game, in my opinion, is very fair. And death does not carry negative consequences other than not getting currency on the night portion of the gameplay. Death anywhere else carries the consequences of you needing the one back to get your stuff. Similar to, I know, a very common thing that some of us say, but similar to Dark Souls. Death makes you leave behind some of your possessions. Now, the possessions that get lost are only the possessions in your backpack. Everything on your hotbar will always stay on you. So always keep the very important things, your guns and weapons and things that you value on your hotbar. And you can expand both your backpack and your hotbar through your progression through the game, so you can get multiple slots on your hotbar and make it sure that your really important items will always stay on you. And that is a very important tip, in my opinion. That is probably the biggest blunder you could do, is having really important items all in your backpack and then die. Because you have to go back to where you died to get those things back. And that's not normally a big problem, because obviously once you died there, you kind of get what happened and what jumped you, so you can plan ahead and go back and kill it and get your stuff back of that. I died quite a few times in my playthrough, but the game still lets you keep going. You'll wake up back at your hideout and you can carry about. Go back, get your stuff. You can just ignore it and just move on with the game. It's up to you. So, honestly, I don't think it's an unforgiving game. Is it a game that demands you to pay attention and be aware of what's going on? Yes, it's very similar again. I know some people might hate it, but some like FromSoft titles that you need to pay attention and be aware of what you're doing and stuff. It's not a game you just slam the X button level grinding in a JRPG in between story sections. You have to pay attention if you want to survive. You need to be a part of the game. It is not a game to slouch on. It does demand work of you, but it is a fair game, for the most part. Now, there are a few problems. I did one in with the PS4 version. Of course, I try to comment on the physical builds, because, you know, for the one day where you can't download patches and stuff, that kind of information will have its use, and thus, that's why it's something I try to... The game is a decent build. It does have some stuttering problems as you play. Normally, not very common, but when they do, and if they happen at a bad time, like in combat, they can, you know, be a little bit of a mess. Can be a little bit of a mess of maybe missing a shot or something. Can't say it didn't happen. I did encounter a strange bug also in the fourth area, where for some reason it perpetually stayed dark, and I had no real idea of what really caused it, but my best guess was it had to do with this weird green poison stuff that was in a separate little room that starts off locked at the hideout of the fourth area. But honestly, I really don't know what caused it, but I was allowed to save and be able to reload to make it stop, because even progressing to the next day did not make it go away. It only happened once. Don't know what happened. Honestly, most of the problems I had with the game, or noticed with the game, happened in the swamp area. The stuttering thing is about the only universal from start to end, but a lot of these problems I ran into mostly happened in the fourth area. Like things like bear traps that you can run into out in the wild, being underneath things. I didn't really see that in the first initial 3 areas, but I saw it quite often in the swamp. There's also these weird living trees in the fourth area that will grab you, but after a while they'll die and let you go, or you can kill them. I've noticed dead ones sometimes still make the living sound effects still, which is a little off-putting, because at first I was confused on whether they came back to life or not, but realized that wasn't the case. And when you do talk to someone, it does make a big kind of old-fashioned text box kind of system showing the character to the side in a full image, but they're animated though, unlike more older ones. But a lot of times when these triggered in the final fourth area, for some reason, sometimes there was a weird flash of a white screen before the game went back to normal. Very odd. And I did experience 2 crashes in the game, but overall, nothing really prevented me from being able to finish Darkwood. Aside from all the overtime at work, because it certainly has been a hell of a journey, actually, if you followed my live stream of this, because I started this essentially in 2021 Halloween, got swamped with overtime, and took a bit of a break out of it, and then started back for 2022's Halloween, finishing it. So it's been a bit of a journey to finish this one, but it's definitely a really fun game, honestly. Managing your hideouts, making use of being able to make barricades and the environment of each hideout to try and survive. Do you barricade? Do you set up traps? Do you just aggressively fight everything that comes at you? Do you bother exploring for secrets? Because I looked up some stuff, and there's a lot of interesting things that if you search around your hideout during night events, there are certain events that actually give you things or trigger. Like there's this whole scene in the forest area where you can have this weird wedding thing with monsters. Like it's like a Beetlejuice like fucking monster wedding thing. It can only happen if you interact with the event that happens during night. And if you stay holed up into the deepest room of your hideout, you'll never get that event because it requires you to go out. So it's interesting that you could actually get rewarded for fucking just running around your hideout at night. Now, not away from it, but I mean, exploring the rooms, answering the front door and stuff. There's just different things. Some very, very rare ones that'll helpful, while the majority are just either random mobs attacking, or there are special ones with special groups of the mobs that you can encounter through the game attacking. So it's very fun, in my opinion. Of course, during your search during daylight, there are many locations. Now, what's interesting about the map system in Darkwood is that, like I said, there's a randomization system. Locations are all the same. Where they are in the maps are shuffled, so monsters and things can be very displaced from one playthrough from another. But what's interesting is the map never gets to really tell you where you are. It's not like a Ubisoft game where it's like, you are right here. The best thing you get out of it is if you're in one of the major locations that get marked, like a hideout, or say like Wolf's Camp, or say the burning house. if you're in that actual location, it will highlight its icon wedge showing that's where you are, but still within that area, it will not pinpoint exactly where. You have to keep track of where you are. Well, you can always look at your map at any time, and you do have a journal you also keep that you can keep track of information you've been given through a diary that the main character writes. You have to keep track of where the fuck to go and where you are. And if you're not good at some navigational landmarks are very important in this game. You're going to want to remember landmarks, which is why each new playthrough could even throw you a curveball, because you got so used to your previous playthrough's map layout. Now it's like, oh yeah, that's to the south now instead to the east and stuff. It can be very, very off-putting, I imagine, for those who may replay this game. But I honestly think, again, it's just something that helps you keep on your toes, and it's just a learning thing. Just a learning thing. Now, you do find items. A lot of items will help sometimes get interactions out of some of the characters, or sometimes just teach you things about the world. Some disturbing, some simple. You'll find keys to unlock some things. There's a number of lock things that I never either found a combination or the key to. Like, if I remember correctly, the original hideout actually has a lock thing right by it, but I never found the combination for it at all. So, and that is literally by the first hideout, and I never, ever, never found the combination for that. So, there are obviously extra secrets to be found. There are extra goodies to be found. There are. Now, there is kind of a light RPG system in Darkwood. Not in a traditional sense that you get EXP for killing things, but cooking things. There are types of meats and mushrooms you can bring back to the special ovens that emit a gas at your hideouts. Cook them, and you can inject them into you. Now, injecting you gives you the experience of the game. And when you level up, you have a very bizarre system of choosing a negative and a positive trait. You'll have multiple positive traits. Your first negative trait, you have no choice. But the rest, you will have a bit of a choice, but you will have to pick a negative trait and a positive trait. And this is where you can customize your character some. Do you want farther vision? The ability to temporarily heal from, using electricity. In different skills, for example, the skill for seeing farther, that's a skill that's active 100%. It's one of the few skills that's active 100% of the time. But most of them are things you only temporarily active, like this one that will heal you while by an electric light source. It'll give you health, but it's only temporary. There's also one that can scale monsters away from you temporarily, where you war. What skills do you want? What benefits do you feel will benefit your playstyle more? You'll have to choose those on your own, but it does give you choices, so you will be able to customize your protagonist some. This can lead to some nice playstyles or interesting ideas for replay. Now, outside your conventional weapons, like I said, with melee and guns, you do have traps too. There's chain traps, there's the bear trap, so you do have a few options with that, which can help out with the hideout, but they can also help out while out in the world. There are certain mobs you can just easily lure into traps, and most mobs will usually react to the trap more than trying to fight you more. So you can use it as a moment to let them down and just melee them versus using a shotgun shell. It's a way to continue taking down harder monsters while not waiting to waste your ammo. it can be a system for that. It actually helped me with the chompers a lot, which was one of the first mobs I started having a lot of trouble being able to melee. They're very useful on chompers. Put it down, get the chomper to step in it, and boom. It's open for just black, 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 waka waka. So, you do get a lot of useful tools to use. And they're all explosives and shit too, which I did not make use of really much. They're pretty dangerous to mess around with, but yeah. Now, in combat, you do have a dodge option. Like, you can dodge, which isn't very good in my opinion. It's pretty flaky, but essentially when wetting your weapon, you can do a back lunge with your stamina. I was honestly not very good at it. It feels a lot tougher than doing a Dark Souls type roll, so, but people can, this is basically how you fight harder monsters easier with melee, is if you can dodge them decently, you're going to be able to melee them and not rely on guns as much as I did for the late game. But again, like I said, you know, the game gives you the options to be able to do that. Like, that's why I say, like, it's best to go in this game blind, because learning everything is part of the fun to me. And it doesn't make, because, you know, if you knew right off the bat you could just stay at the first hideout, farm 1,000 currency, you're probably going to have a fucking real easy trip upgrading your killer and shit. Because, like, the stuff for upgrading your backpack and your hotbar and stuff, you can buy that stuff. You can buy that stuff for upgrading. You can find it in the world as well without having to spend money. Like, you can find almost everything in the world somewhere. And you, like, I can tell you by the end of the game, like, I found shitloads of fabric. Now, luckily, I didn't really buy a lot of fabric. I think I bought 2 fabric through my whole playthrough. But I found most of the fabric. But even if you were to never buy any, let me tell you, if for some reason you haven't had luck finding fabric until you get to the 4th area, you're going to find, like, I had probably, like, fucking 10 plus fabrics laying on the floor at my hideout, just in case there's something I can craft with them. And I was really hoping there was, but they ain't. But, like, you will start finding the shit really commonly by the late game. So, the game provides everything you can get from the trader. But I just say, you could farm, and the only thing really holding you back is needing the materials to upgrade the bench, which you cannot normally buy at a trader. Now, there's one, the first one, the toolbox you can buy at a secondary trader, but that's a little bit different than the main trader that's at the hideouts. Now, the game has very beautiful graphic style using light. Like, your killer basically has a cone vision, so he can only see, like, in front of him, and it has a very fog of war system going on. So, it's very important to keep track of you. The game's controls, being a top-down game, are very familiar to, like, a twin-stick shooter. So, you use one stick to rotate your killer's vision, the other stick to move around, and you can run around, but that eats up stamina in that. You'll want to keep very close tabs, because monsters can just fucking accidentally walk into you and shit if you're not paying attention to your environment. There are trees and all kinds of things that can obscure your vision, and sometimes there are mobs that are just fucking hiding, waiting for you. I have had several spook moments of shit fucking just popping out and fucking me up, man. Whew. But it's a very terrifying environment and very detailed. Honestly, I have to say, I look forward to whatever the fuck the people who made this game do next, because it's just amazing looking. If it wasn't for the stuttering, that's probably the biggest problem, because everything else is pretty minor problems. But, like, the stuttering problem in the disc build for the PS4 is the biggest annoyance with it, of course, you can patch it now and have it fixed. And it's had several more patches of having a few more things tweaked. But it's a pretty decent physical build, though. But I greatly enjoyed this title, even though it took quite a while to be able to get through it all because of real life issues and work and overtime. And yeah, you gotta keep in mind this was during like the height of a lot of COVID shit we had to deal with. But overall, honestly, Darkwood is a really, really delightful game that I recommend anyone of even slight horror buffs to check out. It is not as horrifying as the game wants you to think it is, though there is a hard mode. I have not played the hard mode, but there is a hard mode that supposedly you only get one life in. So that's also an option if you want to go that route too. So you do have the more forgiving normal mode, and you do have the harder mode for those who are really sadistic. Really sadistic. But honestly, I really recommend checking out Darkwood. It's available on so many outlets, and unlike some games, it's same fucking price digitally, $14.99 everywhere. Across the board. No, like, oh, well, upping the price on console, shit like that. Like, you know, the last game I reviewed, I just mentioned that, you know, the console digital versions are $1 extra, even though it was a cheapo game. And actually, right now, as of this recording, it's actually on sale for $4.49 on fucking GOG. So that's like fucking highway wobbly. But here's the real question, though. What is the value of this game, of course? As I'm here to tell you what I think the game's worth, and on top of whether I think it's worth your time to check out, I definitely think if you're into survival horror stuff, it is definitely worth your fucking time. This is a really good game, in my opinion. But what is it worth? It goes for $14.99 across the board on the digital front, and it did receive 2 physical versions. It received a Super Whale Games version for the Switch, which was released at $32.82 US. They're a European company, so you know pricing varies a lot with them. And then let me look up. Limited One Games did the PS4 version, which I'm playing. And I can't remember if it tells... Yes, it does tell you the price. And they released it for $24.99. So, it's actually cheaper than the Super Whale game version. Though, I could probably... You know, you could probably guess which one's worth more on eBay, though. So, those were the prices of the only physical versions that came out that I am aware of. And honestly, I think this game is worth $30, $29.99. I think this game is undervalued, especially on digital fronts. Now, the Super Whale one, you know, it's a little over. $2. Not the end of the world. But yeah, I think this is a generally really good game. It's not insanely horribly long. Let's look at the averages here on time here. Let me get the averages if my horrible Google browser will actually work. But it took me like over 100 days, in-game days, to beat the game. Let's see. It looks like people average between... Come on, load. Looks like people average between 17 to 30 hours, depending on how much side stuff you do. Completionists, which I imagine would include trophies, is about 45 hours. Which, considering there's a few things you can only do once a playthrough, like a few choices that drastically affect a few characters, I can see why you would likely have to, at a minimum, do 2 playthroughs, and that's probably with knowing everything to do. But yeah, you're getting at least a decent, close to 20-ish hours or more, and that's pretty decent. Honestly, I think it's a really good game. I think $30 is a great value for this game. So I think even full price digitally is just a fucking steal, and that's, you don't see a lot of developers not overprice their games a lot of times. A lot of developers sometimes are pretty, I'm not saying necessarily greedy, but like, you don't see a lot of devs be a lot nicer with their prices, even though they could get away with it more. Like things like Undertale, that certainly could cost more, considering how wildly popular they are. But I mean, Undertale's literally just $10. And like, I appreciate not going bonkers crazy on the price, but yeah, $14.99 feels like a really low price to me. But it's a really fantastic game, honestly. I honestly mean it. It's a good game. Check it out if you're interested. Now, it's time to talk about spoilers. So what did I think about Darkwood? Darkwood's story is pretty fucked up and leaves you pretty unknown for a good portion of the beginning of the game. When you start getting near the point where you're going to enter the swamp, and in the swamp, the fourth area, you will start finding a lot of things talking more about who the fuck you are, or more so the people you were with that led to you being stuck here. Essentially, and it's important to note that very little things get 100% conformed in the game. The game leaves in a, again, similar to FromSoft style, a lot of things up to player interpretation, letting you theorize and guess, and there is an interesting community of theories around Darkwood and the things that happen in it, because there's a lot of things that are also very confusing on what the fuck really happened and what some people's motives, or who the fuck some people eat. Like, for example, the merchant at the first hideout and the 3 first initial areas, his body can be found later outside the swamp hideout. Now, I wasn't sure who the fuck that was, but when looking up, it's the fucking merchant from the beginning. And there's all kinds of weird fucking theories on why the fuck he's there, and why he had a moldy key, and like, that's just a rabbit hole of conspiracy and theories of it just by itself. That's not even a really upon footnote in the overarching story of the fucking game. So there's a lot of interpretation. But from what I interpreted on my playthrough is that essentially, and there's still a lot of confusion there, because I don't know when, like, the end game. Like, there's an area after the swamp, but it's essentially like the final boss battle, essentially. So it's not so much a area, but it is a little more than just fucking pull out a gun and start shooting. You're inside this tree thing with this weird spirit thing, and it is just so bonkers fucking weird at what's going on. To me, it seemed like everyone was sleeping, and like the game that we played through was a dream. But it's like, when did this happen? Did we enter the forest for a while? Has the whole thing been a dream? It's tricky to pinpoint if there was a point in the game that we became part of the tree's dream, or whether the whole thing was a dream. Or is that even the case? Maybe it's just me implanting my own opinion on what all the fucking people around this thing are that are just laying there. Like, it's just really fucking weird. But your character gets the option essentially to take a flamethrower from one of the people that was a part of the squad you were with, which that is definitely like there was a note that directly talks about someone in your squad who had a fucking flamethrower. So to me, that basically confirms that the person was a part of your squad. But you take the flamethrower and just burn fucking everything down, which devours you also. Now, there are other endings in the game, too. Some a little bit more peaceful than others, and others are just giving in to the creature and not even further investigating to where I got to. So, I did like that whole segment, too, of, like, going to your house and shit, and whether you explored and started to be like, hey, some fishy going on here, or just go straight to your house and go to bed and be like, the game's done. Like, it kind of reminds me of, like, if it wasn't for the internet, I swear that would be something similar to Symphony of Night. Like, if you, not to spoil anything about, but, you know, if you know what I'm talking about, you're in the know. Like, I swear if it wasn't for the internet, it would be like Symphony of the Night. Like, that moment would be something like that. But I really actually enjoyed that. I did explore, and I did basically grow very suspicious upon exploring, because essentially the world kept repeating to the point where it started growing fungus. Like, there's this whole weird theme of this fungus manipulating and cloning shit. And that's, like, one of the weird theories about the Force Merchant, because, like, the theory is he's a fungus clone of the main character. Hence why he had a fungus diary and a fungus key of the key that you initially are looking for at the beginning of the game. Like, it's like a weird theme, and, like, if you explore so much of the end segment of your quote-unquote home, you will start seeing fungus being incapable of continuing the manipulation of the environment. It's a really rewarding thing to realize there's some still fucked up going on. But I really enjoyed it. It left a lot of questions that are still very confusing to me. But that's the fun of these kind of stories. Like, that's, if you like a lot of how FromSoft does those storytelling, you will likely gain a lot of fun trying to figure out the story and coming up with that kind of shit in Darkwood. So, those are my thoughts on the story as well. Intriguing, but much of it still left as a confusing mystery. And that's, of course, one of the endings I got, which is, from what I can tell, basically considered the true ending, because you basically don't succumb to a fake world or that. So, but I guess it's subjective what is a true happy ending, you know. But those are my thoughts on Darkwood. If you feel like you learned anything interesting, feel free to leave a like. If you feel like you learned nothing interesting at all, feel free to leave a dislike. Feel free. And until next time, I'll see you out there in the woods. Be careful. You don't want to be trapped in those woods forever, you know. Take it easy out there in the proving